This is crazy.
The U.S. Department of Justice has now joined a lawsuit against the city of Evanston's reparation program.
That's right. The U.S. Department of Justice, of all the other things they could be doing with their time, are focused on getting rid of a reparations program in Illinois. The reason why, they say it violates the Equal Protection Clause of the U.S. Constitution because it allotted different benefits on the basis of race. This program, which is the only one in the country in Evanston, Illinois, started back in 2021 and allots $20 million to Black residents and direct descendants of people who lived in the city between 1919 and 1969, a year after redlining was legally banned. And people who face discrimination due to the city's policies or practices after 1969 also qualified, regardless of their race.
Chicago motherfuckers always shitting on the suburbs, but one suburb gave reparations to Black people recently. Evanston, the E, created a reparations program for Black residents harmed by racist housing policies from 1919 to 1969. Recipients get like $25,000. They've committed $20 million thus far. Evanston used cannabis tax income upon legalization and other city funding to pull it. Just shows you that it's absolutely possible. American politicians across the aisle love to condemn racism, then scoff at the idea of paying any fee of restitution for what's been stolen or the damage that's been done. But it isn't because it's not possible. How about not go to war with Iran or not buy bombs for Israel? Give that to the descendants of the enslaved people who built this country, who built Harvard, who built J.P. Morgan Chase. Or how about not bail the banks out? Because the banks built significant fortune by selling insurance against slavery. Reparations are not impossible. It's actually the only common sense equitable strategy to addressing the birth of this nation. Go to repair-is.org for more info.
What's up, family? So Trump just shut down a woke town that was giving out Black reparations. And Democrats are having a complete meltdown on live TV. The Department of Justice came in and said, not on our watch. Real talk. So let me break this all the way down in plain English. And look, I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'm here to show you what's actually happening legally and why this matters to the conversation about reparations in America. This isn't about whether the intentions are good or bad. This is about the Constitution as we know it, or some know it, and what it actually allows. And that's a conversation we need to have straight up. So first, let me show you what this town actually did. Back in 2021, the city of Evanston, Illinois, created something nobody else in the country had done before, a reparations program. They set aside $20 million, and that money was supposed to go to Black residents and direct descendants of people who actually lived in that city between 1919 and 1969, a time period when they faced real housing discrimination because of city policies. Think about that timeline. We're talking about the era of redlining policies that literally locked Black families out of building wealth through home ownership, and the city acknowledged that happened on their watch, and they wanted to do something about it. Now, here's what makes this interesting. They also included people of any race who faced discrimination from the city's policies after 1969. So technically, it wasn't only for Black people, but we're going to get into why that matters later and how did they fund this cannabis tax revenue. When marijuana became legal, Evanston took that tax money and decided to put it toward reparations instead of something else. They already distributed about $7 million in increments of $25,000 per person. Money that went to home repairs and down payments on property. Now, Evanston is the only city in the entire United States doing this. That makes it the test case for whether reparations can actually work within our legal system. And that's why the Trump administration decided this was the moment to challenge it. Now, here's where it gets real, and this is where the lawsuit comes in. The Trump Justice Department didn't just make noise about this. They actually joined a lawsuit that was already filed by Judicial Watch, a conservative group. Their legal argument is straightforward. This program violates the 14th Amendment's Equal Protection Clause. That clause is pretty simple in what it says. The government can't treat people differently based on race. See, a lot of people, family, don't realize, and I know I'm going off script, I guess. You cannot equalize government. It never worked. And when you equalize government and try to make everybody equal, you start having infighting, violence, and a whole bunch of chaos. The reality is individuals want reparations, but as we know it, the problem is happening now where it's being influenced, cultivated, where individuals don't have to work for nothing, but instead cry victim enough to feel like they're owed something. And the world doesn't owe you nothing, which is why what the government gives you can take away whatever they give you. And if that's the case, if you owned it, then why would you be asking for them to give you something? And that goes to the rhetoric of what you heard in the first clip. He said that black people, I quote, built this country in the first place. Well, if black people built this country in the first place, and I'm just speaking specifically to what he said, then how can someone take away something you own? Because you never owned it. That's the whole point. So then you're asking for reparations from the government in regards of you receiving funds as a specific race when we're past that as a country. Yes, racism did exist. It's a sin, and every country has its sins and flaws, but we have come far from that. But to be old when 9 times out of 10 most of the individuals have passed away, which is why they justify where it should be given to individuals who had descendants of this action. But the reality is, why can't we just focus on continue to not discriminate and treat people differently based on race entirely, and continue to move in unity as a country regardless of the race? Why can't we just be colorless instead of continue to focus on color? But like I said, a government that tries to equalize everybody and basically give to those who are in a victim mindset to where they feel the government should give them everything, and everybody needs to be equal and everybody gets their fair reparations here, welfare there. Like I said, what happens is you get more chaos, let alone division, because everybody's going to be looking at everybody wanting more. And the reality is, it also makes the country go in more debt because you're giving out more things in the name of equality to make sure everybody's equal, when it never worked and have never worked in the history of time. And not to get spiritual, but if you look at the Bible tells you that the government should never be trying to treat citizens as equal, treat people as equal. The reality is, equal government never works. The government wasn't made to work that way. And plus, a man that works gets what he gets, right? A man that don't work don't eat. So if a man don't work, then he don't eat. But if he do work, he gets what he basically is owed based off his work, and which determines how much and what he eats. So if you gotta work and that determines how you get fed, then what makes you think you're owed something in the name of you feeling like you own something when you never owned nothing in the first place? That makes no damn sense. And I'm not even talking about race, and I don't care to talk about race because the reality is I push for unity, not division. But I'm just speaking to it in general for any individual, regardless of race. It doesn't make no sense. And if you build this country in the name of speaking to the first clip and black people built it, then how can you take away something you owe? That's the same thing where if you work with your hands and you work hard, no one can take that away from you because that's a skill you owned. Not even the government. See, the government can take away what they give you. Section 8 ain't guaranteed. Welfare ain't guaranteed. Shoot, child support ain't guaranteed. And that's the law. And if you want to look it up and correct me if I'm wrong, child support, even though a lot of individuals in the name of breaking up the nuclear family and deciding they better separate than together when 2 is greater than 1, which is that is in the Bible. And that's just life wisdom, right? Because even if you're not spiritual, you have to understand, if you fall on bad times, you on your own. So if you don't have another person that you'll uplift each other and work in unison, then you hit. So that's just common sense. But also not using each other, because now the influence in the envelope, or I should say the pendulum shift, where people are just being with each other based off of benefit, but not actually caring to have each other's best interest, regardless of what they get out of it or not, because they actually care genuinely to tell the truth and genuinely love. And that supersedes everything else. And then everything else will be added onto that relationship because it's actually on a genuine foundation. So I don't understand how these individuals think they're owed anything is my point. And then on top of it, if you want to be technical, speaking to it, if he's saying in the first clip, black people are old because they built this country. Well, I don't, as far as the infrastructure, it took for, didn't they say Christopher Columbus stole the land and blah, 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 blah. So if anything, if it did get taken, which I don't think in my opinion, and I may be wrong, we just having a conversation. I don't understand if you own something, how someone could take it away. If you own land and you own the whole land in the country or whatever the case may be, well, then why the infrastructure didn't go as far as it is what it is today? It just doesn't make no sense to me. But then you're still asking the government from land that you say you owned and land that you say you founded to give you something in the name of the land that you say you owned. But really, this topic is basically about housing discrimination. But then in the first clip, he made it about black people owning the land. So which one is it? The reality is it's all victim mindset. That's what I'm trying to tell you. The pendulum is going to keep swinging. The goalpost is going to keep moving. And instead of teaching children, because this is who it influences, that instead of you giving them $80 or $50 or buying them a pair of Nikes, and then when they 20 and 21, they're not going to give a damn about them Nikes. How about you actually teach them from the bottom up that you work for what you get? So give them a rake, make them take out the trash, give them a damn lawnmower, and make them earn what they get. Because if they can earn what they get, then they'll actually have a hustle mentality or a work ethic that will carry them forever. And then not to get scripturally spiritual, but you teach a man to fish, he'll eat forever. You fish for him, he'll starve. So to get back to the script, because I went off script, but I feel like that's what's just being encapsulated here, basically. That clause, the 14th Amendment's equal protection clause, in the Trump administration, their legal argument is basically treating people differently based on race. Here's the irony that makes people's heads spin. The 14th Amendment was literally created right after slavery to protect black people and make them equal citizens. And now it's being used to strike down a program designed to help black people. And that's the reality of how law works when you build something on top of the Constitution. Once you establish the principle that race discrimination is illegal, that principle applies to everybody, including when the government tries to use race as a deciding factor in their favor. So let me break that down, how the program actually works structurally, because this is the part that kills the constitutional argument. Race is the first requirement. Everything else builds on top of it. So if you're not black, technically you can apply, but you go to the back of the line, the money is tiered. Black applicants get funded first and non-black applicants wait their turn. But here's the problem. The funding is limited. Once that money runs out, which it will, the people who are in the priority tier get nothing. And it's designed to look race neutral on paper while being completely race-based in how it actually operates. This is why you cannot equalize government, and this is where division comes in. So the Trump administration's assistant attorney general said it plainly. Simply handing out money based on race is race discrimination, pure and simple, and it is illegal, quote unquote. His words. That's not opinion. That's constitutional law, as it's been established through decades of court decisions. Now, before I show you why this is different from other reparations programs that actually held up, I want you guys to check out this clip.
The Trump administration has decided to stop a local government from giving reparations to black people. Put it up full mass. I'm going to explain what the party of small government has decided to do. The Trump administration has made a request to a judge to halt the United States' first reparations program focused on 20th century race-based housing discrimination against a black community in a Chicago suburb. It also joined an existing lawsuit that deems the program unconstitutional. Before I get into the details of this case and the scenario that the White House has presented, I want to remind everyone that the United States of America is not against reparations. The U.S. has given reparations by way of statutory proclamation and presidential concurrence. Reparations has been issued prior. Many groups, including Jewish Americans, including Native Americans, and others. Now, have they given reparations to the tune that we believe they should for some of these atrocities? Of course not. But reparations is not a dynamic of constitutional prohibition.
He's trying to justify basically reparations has been given before, so what's the issue now? Basically. Now, I'm going to say this because I feel like you're going to give out money to individuals in the name of American taxpayer dollars. They didn't earn it, which goes to my point. If you don't work, then you don't eat. The reality is, what does it do to these communities and how does it help? And also, how does it help the economy that a lot of individuals like to tout about when it comes to quote unquote affordability? But how can it be affordable if you keep handing out money like hotcakes in the name of American tax dollars and then you wonder why the cost of living is going up? Stop giving handouts. Help those who actually need help and want to work to help themselves and also get back on their feet. But this cannot be a lifeline. You give somebody $25,000 or whatever the case may be in the name of reparations. Who's to say they have the character, let alone the discipline to do what they should do with that money? They're not going to help the community with it. They're going to run off and do what they want. And the American taxpayer paid for it while infrastructure and everything else is failing. So put it into the community in the name of local government within this Evanston neighborhood in Evanston, Illinois, and actually make it viable so individuals can actually have opportunity that they can seize to pour back into the infrastructure of Illinois. But if you're just giving out money in the name of victimhood, when, like I said, yes, horrific time, horrible, it happened, racism, things like that. But we have come far from that, and we have plenty of opportunities, and also we are influencing the next generation now. So you have to understand that the reality is take the monies and give them opportunity that will last them a lifetime than just giving them money, because a lot of people who get money ain't even disciplined or have the character to do what they need to do with the monies. And the simple fact is it's just going to get splurged how they want. But how does that help all the money that individuals are paying for in the name of taxes, gas tax, grocery tax, state tax, the local government tax, right? And they keep raising. And we're talking Illinois here. I mean, ain't that far from Chicago? Ain't that far? You got Mayor Brandon Johnson over here in Philadelphia. They want to do a Uber tax, a rideshare tax. They want to do a Netflix and subscription tax. Anything to get more money, tax. But then then claiming they helping affordability, but you're taking money out when nothing coming in, and then you're driving out businesses, which is opportunities. But then you want to give more American taxpayer money in the name of reparations, in the name of victimhood, but not give them an opportunity to help uplift themselves, which would be the best reparation to last them a lifetime to help their families actually. So then you wonder why the cost of living get raised. And I'm not saying that the president can't do more or shouldn't do more and focus on affordability, but this is one man, second term, and you think 4 years everything's supposed to happen overnight, when ain't that the whole reason of him getting into office is to basically get rid of government bloat and government spending and frivolous spending and fraud, waste and abuse? How is this going to continue to go for what he voted for, as in getting rid of bloat, fraud, waste, and abuse? So it makes sense why the Trump Department of Justice will want to stop this, because you're just giving out money. And some people, $25,000, what they going to do with it? Because the money they making now, they probably ain't doing nothing with themselves now. So what's going to be the difference of $25,000? So your money exposure is more of who you are. Some of these individuals could get these reparations and think, oh, they saved or whatever the case may be, and spend it the next day like it's nothing. So where is the long-term? Trump is a businessman. This is why I believe that you should have individuals who have a business requirement in local government in any type of political position. Because what is the long-term benefit for individuals in the long haul to continue to sustain affordability? It's not going this way. Just giving out stuff in the name of taxpayer dollars, and it just keep rising, and the cost of living to justify keep giving more stuff. There's no different if someone you ask to give you, hey, bro, for example, they say, hey, bro, can you give me $10? And they may need it, and you give them $10. And then they come back, hey, bro, I need $50. But they ain't working towards nothing. So you're going to be their lifeline and keep giving them money as long as you continue to be the fool to do so. And then when you keep giving them money, they're going to exhaust you out of what you got because they pulling you down, even though you call yourself helping them. But the reality is, where's the boundary? Where's the long-term benefit of helping a friend that you actually care about, where you say, hey, man, you need a good job, or hey, man, you need to be working something to bring some income in. I can't just keep giving you money and I don't see you doing nothing, at least. They just taking. And I said it before. A taker and a taker is psychotic. A giver and a taker is neurotic. A giver and a giver is exotic. When it comes to business, individuals want to see what value you bring because they want to see what value they can take to capitalize when they give value in exchange back to you. Successful people don't have time to friend around. You're going to present yourself. You're going to sell your pitch. You're going to see how you can be valuable and add to them. And they don't got no time to play around and waste games. And it's the same thing that should be done in government. No games being played, no money being wasted, cut down the national debt, continue to lower the deficit that we're in as a country because we keep billing a credit card to this country, giving out things. And I'm all for people getting help, but people got to help themselves too. Like, come on now.
At least not for other groups. But for some reason, that becomes the argument as it relates to Black.
And not to mention, reparations, it does make sense why Trump Department of Justice would say this is divisive because it's going specifically to a certain group. And then on top of it, like I said, handouts until somebody eventually get that handout, does nothing with it, and then want more. It just influences the victim mentality. It keeps adding to the national debt. It doesn't help the local government in regards to the monies they want, that they keep asking more money from the government, because all of this is a domino effect. They're going to give out these reparations and then they're going to say, oh, my city's in shambles as a local government. And then they're going to ask the federal government for more money. And then they're going to be shocked when they say, when Trump's in the Department of Justice and Congress, well, individuals up in the Department of Justice and Trump say no. If Trump said, no, we're not giving out no more federal monies because you just frivolously spent it and then gave it to a particular group instead of just giving opportunities no matter what the race is, that would actually help your economy, and they'll be able to sustain a living to stay in your neighborhoods, in that local legislator or that local area, such as Evanston, Illinois. And then they'll be able to have families and family members and children that'll be able to still live there, sustain the cost of living, and being able to live and actually not live paycheck to paycheck and actually see above water and be able to pay for what they want. And then when you're able to have businesses there, you'll have tourists, you'll have individuals that will actually visit your town. And that's the more, some people think, oh, well, we can tax our way out of debt. You can't. And this is another form of a tax, just in a way of a handout, which is going to cost you in the long run. Then you see it with the stimulus checks. So my point is, if we actually take care of the waste, fraud, and abuse and the bloat and stop just giving out things and actually give it to those who need help and let them help themselves, individuals will actually see affordability exist, and then they'll be able to do what they want and still have money left over and be able to spend money at local restaurants and things in that community, which that would be more money going back into the community on top of taxes they already pay out of their check. And if they got homes or whatever, et cetera, et cetera. But this ain't the way to go. It just doesn't make no sense. And then you can't say that as a community, you are against racism, but then in the name of racism, you feel like you owe reparations. You're going backwards as a country.
People who have been historically disenfranchised, which is the same prerequisite for other groups to receive reparations. And yes, slave owners receive reparations as well after the Emancipation Proclamation. So the program launched in Evanston, Illinois. This was in 2021. We talked about it. is the first and only one of its kind in the United States, allotting $20 million to Black residents, their direct descendants who lived in the city between 1919 and 1969 and suffered housing discrimination because of city ordinances, policies, or practices. Residents, regardless of race, who experienced discrimination due to the city's policies or practices after 1969 also qualified. Also qualified. This is an expansion of the understanding of reparations. Reparations means to repair, and typically in the context of governmental repair. Now, there are some who will say, well, I didn't do that to them. Why should I pay for it? That's not the issue. The issue is it was done to them by way of the government. And while you may not have been alive during that time, the same government that services them today is the same government that serviced their ancestors back during that day. And that same government is here. And that same government has a responsibility to right what they know was wrong. If they would have done the right thing at that time, the generational inheritance of the descendants would be quite different than they are today. That's a basic calculation. That's why you must have a model that includes year to year, because there has to be a known background as to when it occurred. Now you can track the individuals who were adversely affected. There's more. The city has already distributed $7 million using revenue from the local tax on legal marijuana sales to hundreds of people in $25,000 increments to be used for home repairs, down payments on property, and interest or late penalties on property in the city. There's more. The demographics, approximately 14% of the city's population, roughly 76,000 residents are Black. That's according to the U.S. Census, with 11% identifying as more than one race. A majority of the city's Black residents live in the city's 5th and 2nd wards, which are historically low-income areas. That's according to a 2024 study on the reparations program. So let's get back into the lawsuit. The Justice Department filed a motion to join a lawsuit filed by the conservative activist group Judicial Watch, representing descendants of people who had lived in Evanston but could not apply for the program because they were not Black. The suit argues that the racial requirement is a violation of the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment, a statute aimed at making formerly enslaved Black people equal citizens of the United States. Talk about an upside down pyramid interpretation. Literally, the constitutional dynamic was meant to protect the very people that the reparations allocation is helping. It was meant to protect them. But they're utilizing it as an argument against protecting them in favor.
Protect them from what? Because it sure ain't protecting them from inflation, because by the time they get that money, that's not going to even be able to sustain the cost of inflation, because the price and the cost of living in that town is definitely going to go up after they give out these reparations. So you basically going to price them out. See, they tell you the nice part, but they don't tell you how the cost of living is going to rise for giving out this money, because they're going to want it back plus tenfold. Makes no sense. It's not sustainable.
Favor of people who are non-Black. There's more. Put it up for a mask. Hermit Dillon, the Assistant DA, Attorney General, of the Justice Department Civil Rights Division, said in a statement, quote, "There are sound ways for a city to remedy past discrimination or direct resources to its most vulnerable citizens and neighborhoods. Simply handing out money based on race, however, is not the answer. It is race discrimination, pure and simple, and it is illegal." Assistant Attorney General, I need you to read, because the city's prerequisite is not a simple race predicated element. You have to prove factors beyond race in order to qualify for the money. There's more. Mayor Daniel Biss.
You have to prove factors. He's a doctor. You have to prove factors, and I'm not disrespecting his title or whatever, but you have to prove factors beyond race, but it's still giving money to a certain amount, to a certain group or a certain particular race. But it's not about race. And everything he has said, I focus on government and the way government should help to be better, effectively ran and efficiently to lower the cost of living for all race. This man said nothing but blackity black, blackity black. But it ain't about race.
Said that, quote, the city of Evanston is reviewing the Justice Department filing. We stand behind our first in the nation reparations program, are confident in its constitutionality, and look forward to defending it in court. To the mayor, very thankful for your leadership, sir. You all, in my opinion, are on a solid legal and constitutional footing because you do allow individuals who are not black to participate if they can prove the prerequisites as listed. It is interesting that the Department of Justice would seek to stop.
You're still prioritizing one race over the other because, like I mentioned in the beginning, it's a tier.
Call it a reparations bill, call it governmental remedy, call it whatever you choose to. It is a local government concern. The party of small government and local control is seeking and has sought under this administration time and time again to take away your local ability to govern. If you allow them, regardless of your stance on reparations, if you allow them to take this away from you, what will stop them from taking away another local issue from you?
Oh, man. See, victim. Fear-mongering and victim mentality. What's going to stop them from taking something else from you if you let them? You see what he's influencing? Entitlement. Victim mentality. Victim Olympics. If that's the case, Venezuela is owned by their government. Venezuelans is owned by their government under the dictatorship of Maduro thousands of millions of dollars. The same thing with Cuba with the Fidel Castro family. How about you just reset the country for the best interest of all people? Because now you've got to give certain individuals monies and all that. You tearing down a country before your eyes, and then you're saying you want the best interest for a company, and then the country, and then you're saying the government is and this is a way to repair it. Ain't it already repaired by getting rid of racism and doing the right thing? Which shouldn't have been done in the first place, yes, but look, no country is perfect. So now that we heard all of that, and I want to get to the part where, like, constitutional law, right, as it's been established through decades of court decisions. And I want to show you why this is different from other reparations programs that actually held up. Look at Japanese American internment reparations. Those were based on documented specific harm. You didn't need to prove you were Japanese. You needed to prove you were actually interned. And that's documented. The harm is traceable. The individuals affected are identifiable. You don't need a race as a shortcut. With slavery reparations, it's the opposite. The actual slavery happened 150 years ago. There's no way to track who was directly harmed versus who is a descendant of someone who was harmed. You can't definitively say which person in Evanston in 2026, or unless because they started this program in 2021, in 2024 actually suffered from those 1919 policies. So the government can't use race as a proxy for harm when the actual harm is so far removed, is my point. Courts have struck down race-based remedies over and over because of this exact logic. This argument is airtight constitutionally, and that's why Evanston is probably going to lose. And you watch how this play out in reality. The city of Evanston keeps saying non-black people, as you heard, can technically apply to this program that's supposed to make it constitutional. But that's not how it actually works when the money gets distributed. The program is tiered. Black applicants get funded first, everyone else get in line behind them. The funding is limited, so once the money allocated for the priority tier runs out, there's nothing left for the people in the secondary tier. That's the practical reality. The city's basically saying, technically anyone can apply, but we're giving all the money to black people first. And if we run out before we get to you, well, that's just how it goes. That's not a loophole you can hide behind. You can't structure something to look race neutral on paper while making it completely race based in execution. That doesn't pass constitutional scrutiny, and the courts know it. And here's where people get confused about small government. Some folks say, well, this is a local issue. The federal government should be stepping in. But that's not how the Constitution works. The Constitution applies to a local government too. If a small town tried to set up a segregation policy, nobody would say that's local control, so it's fine. We'll immediately say that violates the Equal Protection Clause. The same principle applies here, just operating in the opposite direction. The Constitution isn't a tool that changes meaning depending on which way you want to use it. It either protects people from racial discrimination or it doesn't, which is why it has a standard. You don't get to pick when it applies. The lawsuit has airtight legal ground precisely because race is still the primary requirement to even get in the door. The mayor keeps saying they're confident in the program's constitutionality, but the facts don't support that confidence. Courts have already established through decades of decisions that you can't give government benefits based on race as the primary sorting mechanism. Even if your intentions are good, even if the history behind it is real, even if people were genuinely harmed, intent doesn't change constitutionality. This case is going to strengthen the legal argument against reparations, not weaken it. Every time this loses in court, it builds precedent that makes it harder for activists to push this forward in other cities. That's the practical consequence of taking a constitutional violation to trial. Because we all know lawyers cite previous cases to substantiate their point in their argument when they go to court. Now, here's what people need to understand about the entire reparations conversation, because this goes way beyond Evanston. The government already expanded the welfare state dramatically decades ago. That expansion was supposed to be the remedy for systemic inequality. More food stamps, more housing assistance, more government programs targeted at helping people in poverty. Black communities benefited from those expansions more than any other group proportionally. 1 out of 4 black families are on food stamps right now. The welfare state was meant to address generational disadvantage. But here's the thing. It didn't produce the results people hoped for. Government handouts, even with good intentions behind them, don't actually solve the deeper structural problems. The data shows that. Go look it up. Reparation activists believe that if you just hand out money, it'll fix the generational wealth gaps. It won't. The evidence from decades of the welfare expansion proves that. Which is why you see our president currently justifying the simple fact that you saw undocumented immigrants getting hired over American workers who pay taxes and who are legal and legal immigrants because they wanted to lower the wage for cheap labor, which can come off as slave labor because you're using undocumented individuals who came in the country illegally to get cheap work while paying them cheap money for their work instead of their actual value, and they're not even here legally. So then it takes away American jobs, which then hurts the economy. But then on top of that, if you just bring in individuals that are undocumented and you allow them into the country, now you have not only jobs being taken away, but then they were getting benefits as undocumented and illegal immigrants. So now that's raising the cost of living because you have people here that aren't paying into the tax-based system as a taxpayer, and they're just taking. It's the same thing with a welfare expansion, which is why requirements came where you can't just sit on welfare because you don't want to work if you're an able-bodied person, right? So money alone doesn't transform outcomes the way people think it will. Beyond that, there's the legal problem sitting right in front of us. Too much time has passed. The remedy is too broad. You can't track who was directly harmed versus who's a descendant. Look at it comparatively. Native Americans got reparations based on specific identifiable land claims. Japanese Americans got reparations for a specific documented event that happened to specific traceable individuals. Black reparations will have to cover 400 years, millions of people, and descendants of people who were never enslaved themselves. The reality is, it's going to be used as a gateway to continue to use the victim mentality from years ago to feel entitled to keep saying that the government owe us, and when will it ever stop if it does happen based on this race-based incentive and entitlement. Abraham Lincoln did his part. All right? Freed slaves, which is a beautiful thing. The Constitution doesn't allow that kind of sweeping race-based distribution of government money. This isn't about whether slavery was wrong. Slavery was absolutely, undeniably wrong. I want to make that clear. That's settled. The question is whether the government can legally use race as a deciding factor for who gets money. Constitutionally, the answer is no. Activists will keep pushing, but every lawsuit loss makes the path forward clearer, and it's not leading where they want to go. And the real question that needs answering is different. What actually helps Black communities build wealth and stability? I don't even want to talk about this blackity black stuff. What actually helps all communities, regardless of race, build wealth and stability? That's my real point of this whole conversation. That's my opinion. That's my question I want answered. Let me know what you guys think in the comments, because that's my point. I don't like division, okay? Better together than apart. You want an example? Yes, we have adversaries. China we compete with China as the United States of America. But we also know we better together than apart because we also trade, right? We trade goods in exchange for monies. We use shipping routes to trade goods because it helps our economies. United States and China. Well, China actually have been ripping our economy off for the longest because we haven't been paying them a tax to sell their products here, but they won't even allow our products to be sold in China. But at the end of the day, we still trade goods and services together, better together than apart. Build each other economies. We not that ignorant. We ain't that prideful as a country or as countries, even though we compete, to understand that the simple fact is we can still compete and still be business partners and also exchange what benefits our economies while still competing. Reparations checks aren't the answer the Constitution will allow. So I'm going to wrap it up for you, family, because the biggest thing to understand is this. The Trump administration didn't create the problem that's sitting right in front of us right now. The Constitution did. When you try to give government money based on race as the primary sorting mechanism, you are breaking the law. Do I need to ring a bell for you? There you go. That's not my opinion. That's not politics. That's what the 14th Amendment says. And it's been tested in courts for decades. The Evanston case is going to lose, and not because Trump is in office or because someone wants to block Black progress. We all should want to progress, no matter the race. We got to get beyond that. We got to get beyond race because, to be honest, we are similar in ways, and we are unique in ways. Little do we know it or not. Regardless of race, we actually agree on a lot more things than we actually disagree on. But racism and divisive rhetoric is just fueling hatred and blowing things up when things can be beautiful in regards of understanding each other and having productive conversations and continue to have this country go in the right trajectory. Right? The legal argument is airtight. The city structured a program that prioritizes people by race, and the Constitution doesn't allow that. This should teach us something important. Good intentions don't override the law. You can have the most righteous purpose in the world, the most historically justified grievance, and the most morally defensible goal, and none of that changes whether something's constitutional. There's no ignorance for the law, right? You can't build a just system on top of constitutional violations. That defeats the entire purpose. And we experience it in our own lives. We may think we are coming off with good intentions as much as possible, but at the end of the day, the effect doesn't match up, or the result doesn't measure to the same good intentions you thought you had. That's why you speak to results, not feelings, not what you thought, but what it is. All right? The same way as all of us, American citizens and in this beautiful country, United States of America, we may think the law is one way, but there's no ignorance for the law. If you're not driving with your license or your registration and things are expired, there's no ignorance for that. You're breaking the law. You may have good intentions. Oh, I'm just driving to do blah, this, blah. I was going to do this and that. Oh, I forgot. No ignorance for the law. You broke it. It is what it is. We do it in our daily lives every single day. With freedom comes responsibility. The only thing we should be pursuing is freedom. Well, yeah, the freedom in regards of being responsible, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And you're not even owed happiness. You have to do the work to sustain and keep happiness. I just want to put that there. Nobody owes you happiness. Nobody's going to give you happiness. Just think about that for a second. So this whole point of having a constitution is that it protects everyone from overreach, including overreach done with good intentions. And once you start making exceptions for causes you support, you open the door for exceptions on everything else. And that door swings. I mean, then you see the gravy train with the PPP loans and the COVID. Do I have to go? Like, come on, man. The door swings both ways. Here's where faith comes into this. I spoke about faith a lot in the beginning because it matters more than people realize. The Bible says in Proverbs chapter 29, verse 4, a king gives a country stability through justice, but one who is greedy for bribes tears it down. All right? Justice has to be impartial. It has to apply to everyone equally, or it's not justice. If you just want for those who are not spiritual, the life wisdom. It's favoritism with a different name. We talk about justice for black communities. That's real. It's necessary. But true justice means the same standard applies to everyone. At a point in time, justice for black communities and things happened where it needed to be served when slavery existed in a horrible time in this country history. But if we start carving out exceptions to constitutional protections because we like the outcome, we lose the Constitution's protection for everything else. And eventually, when the people in power change, those exceptions get used against the people we were trying to protect in the first place. This is why the foundation matters so much. Not the politics, not the policy preferences, not even the good outcomes you think you are creating. The foundation. Law, truth, and equal treatment under the law. Under the law. Which goes back to my point of freedom and responsibility. You don't act right, you act like a knucklehead, it costs you your freedom and whatever consequences that come with it, breaking the law. But that's what actually protects people long term. Or we'll have a lot of people walk around doing knucklehead stuff. Some people just don't learn. But hope for the best and hopefully they do learn. But that's what gives stability to a country. Everything else is built on top of that. And if the foundation cracks, everything else falls. So here's what I need from you. Drop a comment below. If you disagree with this breakdown, I genuinely want to hear your thoughts. I'll pin the best counter argument because I know there's going to be some. I'm not here to belittle you or make it feel as though my perspective is better than the other. I just inform it based on the Constitution. I gave examples. I gave spiritual and life wisdom that I hope resonated with you and added some value with a beautiful, different perspective. And even we can agree to disagree, which I think we need more of that in this country because it has been very, very advocated to basically, if you disagree with someone, they're deemed evil, which I don't believe that. I believe that if we have different opinions, we actually can see the perspective and learn from it from a different way. Also understanding and learning each other mindset. And also just being open-minded to something you may not have never heard of before from a perspective standpoint. However, as always, we just having a conversation. Share this with people who need to understand how the law actually works, because this isn't just about Evanston or reparations. It's about understanding that the Constitution applies equally or it doesn't apply at all. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, turn on your post notifications so you don't miss the next one. We break down what's actually happening in this country without the political theater. Spread the peace, love, and positivity, family. Let the love supersede the hate. On that note, peace.